Hey, Giants, welcome to Wake Up with Giants Radio. I'm Nick Smith, the gentle giant, joined by Dr. Rachel Smart, the smart doctor, Justin Middleton, and Ryan the Lion Morris. We're excited. We've got a special show for you tonight. We're actually going to be talking about how to explore and create life with a heart-centered approach. And so as we go through this on the social media, you'll be able to comment. On radio, you won't. And so, for those that might not know what we're talking about on social media, on the radio, we might have to read some of these quotes so they can keep up with us. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
we're
having us.
calling in from Georgia, so good to be here too.
Yeah, where's everybody at location-wise? Georgia, Justin?
Florida, man.
Florida, Ryan Morris?
Draper, Utah.
Draper, Utah, in his truck, of course.
That's right.
He's mobile, right?
Live in the truck studio.
Awesome. Well, Justin, let's dive into the topic. Will you lead us in?
I will lead us in,
Yeah.
and I appreciate it. This is something that is near and dear to me. This is something that I continuously have awareness around, and something that I'm always trying to get better at on a daily basis. Leading life with a heart-centered approach. It's important. It boils down to fundamentals of human existence, right? It's love. It's one of the big things. It's one of the big ones for all of us, right? We all just want to be loved in some way. So it's something, it's an easy way to connect with people. And I feel like, not to go too deep into this conversation, but I'm sure we will on this show, right? But, over time and since we were kids and the way things are now in society, we spend time like blocking up our heart, right? We spend time kind of creating these barriers around it so that, we don't get hurt as much the next time that comes around. And I realized, recently, probably sometime this year, is like I had spent so many years blocking up my heart that I wasn't feeling or seeing things the way that maybe I should, or as intense as I should, right? Things could happen, and where I was supposed to feel that, I had kind of blocked that, off over time. And I just realized like I should probably start spending, more attention on, opening up my heart and just trying to connect with people and empathize with them in certain situations and just see what shows up, man. Just try to like really connect with someone on such a basic level. And for me, that's why I really wanted to talk about this topic, because it's something I'm super aware of nowadays, and I'm really interested to see what you all have to say about it. And where this conversation will go.
I'm going to make up all kinds of stuff on this one. I'll tell you this, I find myself coming from ego a lot in my life. So when I say ego, I'm in my head more than anything. So fewer emotions, like softer emotions, more of the rigid ones, the anxiety, depression, things like that. Concern about what others might think. So a heart-centered approach to me seems to be getting to your core and not really worrying about what happens out here, but getting into here. Do you agree with that? Or is there some other version of that you might share?
No, I mean, yeah, it would be at the core, right? For me to open things up, it is at the core, but then the things that happen outside of you tend to be a little bit more impactful on you, right? And you can, again, for me, it's just a feeling, It's a feeling. It's not something that you can almost describe. And, I've done a lot of work around, I don't know, I know Townsend Wardlaw, but his wife, Louisa, does this human design work. And I'm with you. I'm like a very headstrong and throat strong person. There's a lot of energy flowing in these. It's kind of why I've always loved talking. I've always been, a person that would present more than I would write anything. I would get on a stage and talk. I didn't really care about that when I was a kid, but kind of looking at that and noticing that and just being aware of how much energy is actually here. And for me, I just kind of place some of it lower throughout the day and just try to redirect some of that energy inward, like you're saying, into my heart, and just spend some more or push more energy down there and just see what will evolve from it. It's very interesting, and it's a very difficult thing, but I guess it's only as difficult as we make it. So
yeah, it is a choice. Rachel, what do you think around that? How do you stay heart-centered?
Well, I think, looking at different experiences of life, wherever we've navigated, we have some maybe stories around that. I know I have a lot of loss in my life and some of the sorrow. So I start to putting things around my heart thinking that I don't want to get too close because I might hurt, or fear of rejection. So I don't. And I'm getting better as I get older. Going, let's talk about the stories that what's really true and what's untrue. What do I think to be true? And by asking questions and getting very with the relationships we have, to asking the questions. And I know I just about 2 months ago, I went to go visit a friend. I brought over some soup, but she was having surgery, and she had a real kind of a hard life, a little struggling with financial things, and just came in there. And I want to be able to serve her well, and just going to sit back and take some time. It was a day before I was going to leave for an outside trip. So I was kind of just want to be present with her and give her all that I had. And I just started asking her questions instead of judging her or whatever her situation was. And she told me that her mother was blind. And I thought that was so interesting, and asked to tell me the story. And anyway, learned that her husband that she married, his mother was blind too. And I just started really seeing them differently and loving them with my heart instead of judging them because they didn't have what I thought you might want to have at this time in life. And so I think what I'm trying to say is that we have stories, but we have to know that we can change.
Yeah.
Asking better questions and seeing it with different lenses.
So you opened up, I mean, really to their perspective, their experience. It sounds to me like you stepped out of this me-centeredness, like what I need in this whole situation, and got into curiosity and contemplation around them, which really does open you up. When you get curious about other people, you start feeling empathy, you have compassion more, not only for them, but I would imagine for yourself. Do you agree with that, Ryan?
Yeah, and I've always come from, like, I'm a very heart-centered person, so but I still catch myself sometimes getting stuck in ego or judgment, especially if I'm maybe I'm stressed out, stuff like that, where like maybe my temper is a little bit, my fuse to my temper is a little bit shorter. I work in retail sales, and people come through the front door, and if the person before somebody was not a great customer, I might carry that into my next relationship with the next customer, right? So I've had to watch and make sure that I'm open to and being aware of how I'm being, and not letting the emotions dictate the experience. And so I'll pause. I've tried to be more and more aware of this, and the more I do it, the more I catch myself, and then I can change quicker. Like it used to be that I'd be like, that customer was the worst, I hate that guy, and then I carry it, hold on to it into 2 or 3 customers deep. Now I have a bad customer, or have somebody that, a not a great experience. And even inside of that customer, like going through, and those emotions are coming up. Now I'm catching myself pausing and saying, okay, why are they being this way? How can I come at it at a different angle? What may be going on in their life that is having them react this way? Is it something that they're being almost triggered? Am I saying things? Could I say it in a different way? So I don't know. That probably didn't answer any of your question, but that was what was on my heart at the moment.
No, it didn't.
So,
it was perfect. Yeah, it didn't answer anything.
I just thought if I talk long enough, you just forget.
I'll bring it around.
People would
No,
fall asleep.
you had some great thoughts in there. Like, one of the things that you're suggesting is that you can carry energy over, and it'll impact how you show up and what you perceive in the next experience or the next event. And with the headline and the title of this show being How to Explore and Create Life, that curiosity is one of those things that puts you back into a whole mind state. Like, when you get curious, your brain doesn't shut off. When you're feeling really egoic or angry, I would imagine that there's some shutdown on your capacity. Like, you don't have capacity for others, and you don't have capacity to create. And so that's, I don't know, does that trigger any thoughts for anyone?
Well, I had a friend that she was telling me a story this last week, and it kind of related to how we, like, process through this experience. And let me just tell you, so she was on a trip, and she was on a bus, and there was a man that came on the bus, and he had 3 little children. They were like chaotic, running all over, rambunctious, and she was getting very irritated, and just everybody was getting annoyed. And finally, she reached up to the young man who was kind of not paying attention to the kids, and she said, is there any way you could get more control over your children? He looked really startled, and he just said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He goes, their mother had just passed away, and I'm just lost, and I'm sure they are too.
Yeah, I remember that's Stephen Covey's story
Right.
on
There's
the
a lot of
paradigm shift. Yeah, beautiful.
and just changing,
Yeah,
like, okay, now we're going to help that person instead of judge that person. So it's all about understanding, seek to understand before we judge.
yeah, I like that. So, Justin, what's that bring up for you?
Several different things, right? Like,
Yeah,
we interact with so many people on a daily basis, depending on what you do, doctors, retail, like no matter what it is, you're interacting with people unless you work from home like me. And still, I mean, virtually I'm interacting with people, and, there's still a disconnect there. I think that the virtual space is missing some of that body language, some of that chemistry that you exchange in real time is still lacking in the virtual world. So I try to, combat some of that or make up for some of that, I guess you should say, in the virtual world. But, in person, like any kind of retail or anything, I did retail for years, hospitality for years. Like, to me, you're always going to deal with people, bad people, good people, all people. You'll have the neutral people that don't want to talk, but there's nothing wrong with them. That's just who they are, right? And I always looked at it in the way that, I had the opportunity to create an entire experience for that person. Regardless of how I felt or what was going on before, I had the opportunity to really wow them in whatever I was doing, right? And I seized every opportunity, and it did me really well in, the hospitality industry. I served for years. I served tables for years. It's just such easy money for me because, I love talking to people. I can multitask really well, and it's easy. Like, you just walk around and talk to people all day. So the way that I created the experience for people, and, I always told people, like, people come out to be taken care of, right? And they really don't know what else is going on around them. They don't know what else is going on in their world. And quite frankly, they probably don't care unless they ask. But it's up to you to create that experience that makes them come back each and every time. And when you can impact people in that way, the effect you have on them is just a lot different, right? And, I don't know. It just served me well for many years in that type of industry.
So what about creation? When it comes to creation, coming from the heart in your creation, how do you know when you're coming from the heart? Because I think that the ego is pretty good at mimicking what the heart might be like, right? So how do you know that you're truly heart-centered?
Again, it's a feel, right? It's a feeling on a vibrational level. I think one of the quotes or one of the comments that came up earlier was, a heart-centered approach is without doubt. With the mind, with the ego, there's doubt. There's those second questions. There's those alternate routes, right? With the heart-centered approach, there it is. Yeah, that one. With the heart-centered approach is without doubt. I just react instead of, what did it say? React instead
right here. Yeah,
respond.
Instead of respond,
right?
Yeah.
I think that's it. The reaction, the feeling is different than the response of the mind. The mind will give you those alternatives to choose. The heart knows.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of a vibrational feeling in a way.
Ryan, do you have a way that you get to your heart? Like, is there a way that you center?
So I used to be very quick, short-tempered. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that that's here. I apologize if you have, but what I found over time is that I became conscious and aware of that behavior. It actually kind of made me nervous because I would get, very quick to anger. So over the years, I've learned how to be aware that that's what's coming up, and I mentioned it before as far as sales is concerned, but now what I do is I'll pause, and usually a lot of times I'll go just try to be with myself for a minute. I've had conversations where maybe I've been I feel those emotions. It starts getting a little heated, a conversation or something that I'm angry about. And I'll tell that person, I've learned to communicate, use my big kid words, right? Say like, hey, this is what's happening. I need a minute. And then let's revisit this. If I get pushed too much, sometimes I'll just be reactionary. So I know that that's what I don't know if it's like a response that's more natural is to be reactionary. So I've started to be aware that, hey, if you push me, I'm going to get reactionary. So let me pause and then let's come back. Is that okay? I'll talk to the people and then I'll go just be with myself. Fishing does a really amazing thing for me. So if, like just going and being outside in nature, I like to reload bullets because it's just repetitive and something to do. Maybe that's the ADHD going on. And so it's just something that I can and I'm scared to death that I'm going to screw it up. And ADHD, you'd be all over the place. Well, with reloading bullets, you don't want to be all over the place, or you
you don't want to put cinnamon in there, or salt and pepper.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work.
It smells nice when it goes off.
Yeah,
but so it makes me focus on something else and be very hyper focused to that for a little bit. I can calm down and I can think about it. As far as like, more of a love centered or a heart centered space, I'm an empath anyway, so I feel people's emotions very strongly. When I see somebody else and they're having a hard moment or they're going through something, struggles especially get me. It hits me hard anyway in the heart. So I've always been pretty good at seeing somebody else, loving them, seeing their giant potential and trying to help them for where they are. But I still, I'll try to serve. Like that's a big thing for me is service. When you can take your eye off yourself, it becomes so much easier to come in from the heart. Because when
it
you
really
start
does.
to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yep. It opens you up to other people really well.
I'm glad you said yes.
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. No, as I hear you speaking around this, one of the things you said is that sometimes you're going to be reactionary and there's going to be some cleaning up to do. How do we handle that? I mean, Justin, are you perfect all the time? You're always heart centered. You never go back to ego and you
Justin
never react and things are phenomenal all the time. Like Rachel is, I know that about
and
her.
Rachel
She's
is
like even
we already know about Rachel. Yeah.
She doesn't have a mad bone. I think they left that emotion out of Rachel.
Well, no, I was thinking about, I'll let Justin, but I had something that when a little while ago, about a couple of years ago, I had won I had won the most sales in our company. It was on the top. And I thought, well, you know what, if they think I can do it, because I'm about getting orders or helping, I'm going to show them what I can do. So the next month I went out to try to get an order, and I was going to get an order, and guess how many orders I got? Yeah, because I was not thinking
you guys
about
both guess zero. I was going to guess like 8.
Yes. She's all 800,000.
The more you want it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't thinking about who am I going to love versus who I'm going to sell to. And so I had to realize I wasn't coming from my head, not my heart, like I was before. And so I came back and say, I'm always who do I love, not who I'm selling to, who I want to care and bless.
Isn't that interesting that the more you try and force it, the worse it goes?
Yeah.
Like Justin, if you try and force yourself, you ran 62 miles this week.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Whoa,
so you ran 62 miles, 15 hours. If you would have forced that, let's say that you pushed yourself and you forced it, could you have, well, just tell me what might have happened instead of me leading into that.
I mean, yeah, I did have to force myself, especially at the end.
Okay.
I was in but in the beginning, you have the tendency to force yourself more than you should, right? So that's something you have to be aware of, because in the beginning of a race, there's more people around. So you kind of get wrapped up in what they're doing as opposed to what you're doing, right? And then you have to really remember, hey, I'm just out here just to, beat myself or do my best time, or in a way kind of sounds like the ego. But if you're doing it, like for me, I just love running so much. So it's not about the actual race itself or where I'm going to place. It's like, can I do better than I did, 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, whenever I did my last run. But at the end, I mean, it becomes a lot of mental. It's mainly just mental, because your body wants to give up so much. You just have to kind of coach yourself and trick yourself into running, more and more. And I didn't have a choice at the end, because it turned dark on me again. We started at 6 a.m., so it was dark. And then we ran all the way through, and I finished at 9 p.m. So,
man,
like 7:15, it got dark again. Well, I had a headlamp, but it had died throughout the day. So it died and I was running in the dark. So I was running with this other guy and I'm running like kind of just right behind him to the right a little bit so I can use his little bitty headlamp and watch the trail. So I really didn't have an option because the only other option was to try to navigate in the dark. So I was pushing at his pace and it no longer became my race. So it took me to an even deeper pain cave, if you will, if you want to call it that, which
wait, did you just coin a word?
pain cave?
What? Pain cave?
Pain
Yeah.
cave.
Oh no, that's
No.
been,
We're giving it to you.
Okay.
keep going.
No, so for me, it becomes, yes, it's the mind. But again, if my heart wasn't in it, if I wasn't so, passionate about the running, passionate about the work that I had put in to get to that point, at a certain point, it becomes more about the connection that you can make with your mind, with your body, with your heart, with your soul. Everything kind of connects and creates this powerful force that feeds you and gets you to the end, regardless of what, your body's screaming, my foot's like, things are swelling up, you're completely depleted of energy, burning 9,000 calories, you're eating maybe 800. Like, it's just unreal. But you have to commit. Like, once you're committed, you gotta, for me, I gotta do it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna lean on
I
you.
would be in the pain cave. I was going to say I would be in the pain cave after 3 blocks. Diane.
All I heard was pancakes. I just want to eat pancakes now.
Pancakes and pain caves.
Yeah, I'll be in
Maybe
the
is there
pancake.
pancakes in the pain
Yeah.
cave? I'll go then.
Sure.
I hope we have maple syrup because
In my
I'm
pain
the
cave, there was nothing but a cheeseburger. I was like running to get a cheeseburger, So you're kind of like carrot in
That's
the
what's at
stick.
the end of all the
tricking
races?
yourself.
What?
What's that?
I said that's what's at the end of all the races is a
It's
cheeseburger?
cheeseburgers, yeah.
They had like quesadillas and stuff at this one, like cooked up, ramen noodles, quesadillas, stuff like that, cooked up, ready to go. But I had been envisioning a
They better have
cheeseburger
some
for like-
Ruth's Chris.
Yeah, right. Some steak. Well, so as you're sharing, Justin, as I hear that, I hear this letting go. There's this stage. I don't know if you guys have ever done a float spa where you get in there and it's all this salt and you just get in there and you float on the water. And it's weird because you can't tell where the water ends and your skin begins and vice versa. And so to really get into the experience, you have to let go and just float and just trust that it's doing what it's supposed to do. But it's interesting. You kind of lose your mind a little bit in there. You lose all of this stuff that goes on out here because we're very perceptual and we see things and then we start to react from what we perceive. And our senses kind of fail us in a way because we think we're seeing it the way that it is. And sometimes we're seeing it the way that we are. So if you're coming at that race and you've got this little bit of light, if you would have had an attitude or an affect of this is terrible, I hate this, you probably would have come at that a little differently, right? So there had to be some letting go of this is exactly where it needs to be. This is what needs to happen. I'm okay. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because the night before the run, that last night, you're getting ready, you're getting prepped, you're making sure everything's ready. You got to get up at like 4 to go, make sure that you're in line, get the registration, make sure you didn't miss anything. The course tends to change at the last minute, so you got to figure out what you're running, make sure you got the right shoes, the right insoles. There's just a lot of variables that you kind of have to problem solve in real time with ultra running, and that's one of the fun parts for me as well. But I remember the night before just kind of having that conversation like, wow, what am I doing? I'm in a whole nother state. I went through all this to get here to just run. Like I could have ran in my backyard. I didn't have to travel 3 states over, 5 states over to go run. It's just so funny, right? But I had that conversation of it is what it is. There's nothing you can change at this point. You are as prepared as you are going to be. And all you can do is show up and do. Whether you make it, whether you don't, whatever. And I remember, kind of having that conversation with myself, and I went to sleep and I rested really well. I slept, 6-7 hours. And then when I woke up that next morning and got it moving just a little bit, had my first cup of water, it was like this euphoria kind of flowed over me. And there was so much energy just pouring through me. And I didn't act on it because I knew I was going to need it, but I just felt good and I knew I was ready and I knew things were going to line up. And it was on from there. And
yeah,
I just tackled it. It was unreal.
I think of Rachel, Dr. Smart, when you got up on stage on the national stage and with short notice, and you just said yes to it, right? And I would imagine there's this sense of preparation, almost maybe a panic of, oh man, I've got a short window and a lot to do and a lot to cover and create. And you prep all you can, and then you get up on the stage, and like Justin's describing here, you just do.
Mm-hmm. But Justin, you prepared your whole life. I mean, when you're young and we're looking at those that are watching the show, we don't usually go to life and you have a game starting out, and we're talking about helping children within the, some of the things we do within the Giants. But you have to learn those mindsets tools. You go through life navigation or life courses, and you're going to get in the ditches. You're going to have the wind, the rain, and it doesn't happen day one, but it's something that you have developed, maybe a core nature, maybe to your favor, but then it's mostly having to learn to get up and to work yourself off and to navigate it, because life is not easy, but we have to learn and trust and surrender, and then just one day at a time. For most.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I would have to go back and say, a lot of it started, and of course it's something I've worked through continuously, but a lot of it started with just my parents' simple rules. They didn't care what we tried. They didn't care what we did. They supported us. They got us all the gear. They wanted us to do and try everything. The only rule they had was, once you start something, you cannot quit till the season's over. If you don't want to play football next year, that's fine, but you're going to play this year because we already got you everything. You're already set up. You signed up. You committed to the team. You're going to show up every day and do your job, And that, for me, has just kind of stuck. It's like, once I decide I'm going to do something, nothing will stop me. I'll just do it. I was running on pavement, and I had been training on trails here because it was supposed to be trails, and the course change was all pavement. So I hadn't trained for that. So at about mile 27, my right foot and ankle was just like blown up. So sore. I was limping really hard, but I never stopped running. I was like, it'll go away. I'll forget about it, or the other pain in my other part of my body is going to take over to the point that it'll just be normal. So, I mean,
let's talk about that. So if you get rigid, let's say you get rigid in your ways and there's a change like that, and you're so rigid and you're set in how you were going to do it, you can't let go of that. And so when there's a change, you're not able to adapt to it. And I think part of our staying heart-centered is staying open to all possibilities. Like if there's a change, there's an easy adaptation to it. I think it was Darwin that said it wasn't the survival of the fittest, it was the survival of the most adaptable to change, which I think that gets misquoted. We think it's often the strongest and the fittest that survive, and it's those that can adapt. And so do you think that's important to stay heart-centered?
Yeah, of course. Because if you're not, then the ego is going to take over, and you're going to think your way is the only way, right? If you're heart-centered, then you're open to possibility. You're open to changes. You're open to variabilities. And it's so interesting because I do a lot of business consulting, and it's really cool to just get other people's perspectives on the same process, and just to see those little nuances, and then kind of combine each little piece and try to put together this puzzle. Is all I do. Try to put together this puzzle that creates something that's so simple that anybody can do it, right? If you're looking at ultra running, if you're too rigid, like, things are going to happen. You can only prepare for so much out there. You're out there 15, 20 hours. Some of these races I want to do are 3 and 4 days long. Like, you cannot prepare for that. There's only a certain extent, and then you've got to problem solve on the fly. So again, if you're not coming from the heart and you're not, doing it for the right reasons, you're going to, for me, like, I'm going to fail in those certain situations.
We're going to go another minute here, and then we'll take a small pause for about 2 minutes, and we'll just chit chat for a bit for the radio show. And then, just heading into the break here, what's another thought that you have around staying heart-centered? I'm going to lean on Rachel and kind of put you on the spot on this. How else can people, just as a tool, a quick tool to stay heart-centered, what would you recommend?
Well, I think mindset, it's the words that we say go into the energy that we bring. So I see that, we're people that are parents, or you're a coworker, or you're going through a later stages in life, you got to expect it to be wonderful, but it is not. but you can be able to trick your brain. I know that, Justin, you're talking about how you trick your brain when you're going through this navigation, but flexibility is the key. And we just have to work through it. But our mind and what we say, what we want to, feel comes from what we say and what we tell ourselves. So it's really, really important to be able to keep our head right with our words.
Yeah, that mindset. So yeah, I just got a private note here, message. So maybe we won't pause. Maybe we'll just keep going.
It's a good
sound
one.
all right? I was thinking, hey, let's just take a little break. I wanted a break, but
you want to get heart-centered again.
Yeah, I do.
Snack
I want
time.
to get heart-centered. Snack time. Sometimes we need that intermission, like in the movies, like potty break, But I'm good.
we all just disappear like this.
Yeah.
And we're back.
No, well, so going forward, let's continue then. So the heart and who you're creating yourself to be is going to be important in that. Every morning when I wake up, I have a chance to re-engage with who I want to create myself to be. And so you and I, Justin, learned about declarations and how to create those and not just say them, like frosting dog poop is how they akin it to is if you don't take it internal, then you're just covering up the mess, basically. Yeah. And so to really create yourself as something is to start being that and recognize more fully where you're not being that. And so do you think that ties into being heart-centered is who you're creating yourself to be will show up in how you're being in the world or what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think this ties everything together, right? What we talked about in the beginning, what Rachel just touched on right there is like, what you're saying to yourself, those little tricks, those little things you can call these declarations, tricks, like whatever you want to do, are positioning you and allowing you to create, who you want to be, a heart-centered person, right? Come from the heart. And you asked earlier, are you perfect? And, how do you do this? And far from it, right? But one of the tricks that I use now is, traffic is still a big one for me. I get a little worked up in traffic.
I definitely don't come from the heart when I'm driving. Yeah.
So what I do in those situations is I forgive myself for judging myself, but kind of like Townsend said, I do the entire sequence, right? So it may take 2, 3, 4 minutes to go through this entire process, but eventually what my brain is going to realize is, dude, you judge somebody like that, and then you got to do this whole load of work to get back out of it, right? And eventually it's just going to stop doing it. That's how I see it anyways, in those particular situations. So yeah, just finding little, avenues, maybe breathing, some people like the breath. The breath has a lot of control over how you feel. So just taking a moment to breathe and go through it. And if you're talking to someone, right, kind of like Rachel said, diving in, asking those questions, kind of, picking at it a little bit. And Nick, I think you're really great at like asking questions. I remember the first conversation I had with you over the phone months ago now, but I was just like, man, the way this guy asks questions is just unreal, right? And it felt like you were listening, right? You could feel it even though we were on the phone, and it was just so impactful in that way. And I recently read a book, or I am still reading and outlining and learning, but Deep Listening by Oscar Trimboli. And he talks about how, our brains can process 400 words a minute, but we can actually only speak 125, right? So when you're having a conversation with someone, they can only speak 125, but they're still thinking about the difference, the other 275 words, right? So asking those questions or creating a space or pause or an opportunity for them to kind of gather their thoughts and catch up and then continue processing or ask them more and dive into that is just a way to connect with them and just see what's really in there and where the conversation goes.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting that I found is Carl Rogers is one of my favorites as far as human-based listening. And if you really just feed back, sometimes you don't even have to ask questions, but you feed back to people what you heard them say. They tend to go deeper and just correct you. They'll correct you, and then they resolve their own challenges.
Yeah.
And I think part of what I'm hearing in the heart-centered approach is when you give people space to really just talk about what's going on within them, you're giving them space to heal that. Because a lot of times we don't create space for that. It's not okay for them to have their differences in some cases. And so we block that off. So you might start talking about something and then there's a shut off. So it's never complete, never comes to completion. And so opening up and giving space really allows others, I think, to get into that heart-centered space as well, to where they can really connect with what they need to heal. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
times, I mean, we do it to ourselves, right? People say, oh, I talk to myself and, you know, does that make me crazy? It's like, no, like sometimes to get the thoughts out of your head, to get the words out of your head and just be like a sounding board. And, you know, people are using you for that as well. And a lot of times, like you're saying, maybe they don't want your opinion. They're just kind of letting the words flow out of their mouth and just seeing what. So just sitting there nodding, going through it with them will allow them to make those connections.
Except for Ryan, he wants my opinion.
He just gives it.
Yeah, I just give it. He's like, man, are you done yet? You know, Ryan, do you have some thoughts around that? What do you think? Because I know with sales, you've got to talk to people and really connect with people quickly. And so that's a creative process right there. You really do have to get into that heart space to connect with them. So what do you think around this?
For sure. Yeah. Seeing things from, I mean, everybody does something different. Like we're not all the same, not even close. So their way of being or their way of doing something might be totally different than the way that I would doing. I was told one time, and this might not be PETA appropriate, but there's a million ways to skin a cat. Okay, so there's all kinds of ways that you can do it. I'm sure I could come up with something else.
Not something we do on our shows ever.
Yeah, I don't condone skinning cats. You'll go to jail for skinning cats. But there is a million different ways to do it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, the idea behind that is that look, if you can start to see or feel from where somebody's coming from, doesn't mean you have to agree. You know, it just means that it is what it is. And so I can look at somebody that comes in and you know, and particularly I work in sales. And so I work with the public a lot. So I see all kinds of different people that come in, and the way that they're going to go camp isn't the way that I would camp. So I can share a million different ways to do it with them, but their way's their way. So I then will listen to their way, talk to them about it, ask them about it, figure that out, and then I can turn around and speak to them in their language and feeling, and help them in that process to where, just like Justin said about Nick, is that, man, you're a good listener, you're a great guy. We could have totally different opinions in every other aspect in life, but because I listened to where they were at, felt their feelings, and help them through the process, we're walking out of there like we're best friends. We've only known each other for an hour.
You hit something that's awesome. And I don't know if you caught it, but speaking to others in their language, right? Like, and we all might speak the same language, but we don't speak with the same listening, and how we're listening is going to impact, you know, what's received and what's communicated. And so speaking in other people's language just gives grace to the way that they are, you know. Rachel, do you have some thoughts around that?
Oh my goodness. I have something my story is being made into a movie, and I had some people interviewing my children about 2 years ago, and they were supposed to be in our house all day, and we were supposed to be out of the house, our kids and their family, except for the interviewers. They had the microphone and they had people there sharing the story, and all children were interviewed. The story is really about my life, right? And so for some reason I decided to pop in on the last daughter when she was being able to be interviewed. It's my oldest daughter. My husband you don't know the whole story for those that are watching, but my husband had passed away and had a lot of navigation of being a mother and trying to pull the whole house together. But my daughter has a different love language than I had. And I wasn't really aware of it so much, but I snuck in the kitchen listening to what she was saying. And she said, my mother has never really connected to me. She went on, it was like a therapy session. She was going on and on and on, like all these things. I was blown away, and tears were just streaming. Like, you're kidding me? I just took you to Hawaii. I spent, like, what? I don't listen to you, you know? And so
this is as mad as Rachel gets.
Yeah. She's yelling. Stop yelling at
I'm yelling, Rachel.
So make a long story short, I was so hurt. I cried for 2 weeks. I felt like I aged, and I thought, what is true? Is there truth? What's the truth? What is my part? What is her part? Where does she see what she doesn't see? And how do I need to be? So I didn't say anything to her, but I just went through the next year. And when she asked me questions, I just said, help me understand. So what do you mean by that? I really try to listen to her. It took about a year, and then she ended up writing me, come calling me and just said, I was comparing you to her mother-in-law the way, anyways, a long story, but she doesn't have my love language. And so I realized I was speaking Chinese to a French person. So I realized she wants me to listen to with her without any undivided attention. And I have to look at her and see her as she is, not how I am. And that's how I connected. And we changed our entire relationship. So I came to learn more about how to love her, and then learning more about how to see others. And she taught me a lot. So I'm very aware, or more aware, of how to connect and to not assume that everybody's like me.
I get
Everyone thinks the
curiosity.
sunlight is going down. It is. And my light is on.
Ryan's
it's a high-tech studio I have
like
right
the sun.
Here.
Yeah. You're here, babe.
The idea of exploring and creating from the heart center, exploring that curiosity. When you get curious about others, it opens up that space for healing, right? Not only them, but your relationships, but creation. Let's dive into creation a little bit. How does that impact your creation? So when you get into that space where you're really open to something new, can you speak to that a little bit? Or maybe I didn't lead that question well enough. Maybe we'll dive in another way. Any thoughts come up right away?
Yeah, I didn't know who you were pointing to, so I was going to wait.
It was you. It was you, Jess. I was talking. I was waiting. It was an awkward silence.
For me, it's interesting that you say that, right?
Yeah.
Because something I've been really aware of the past couple of years is, where I'm depositing my time and what can I do with it. So even little bitty simple things, I realize how many decisions we start making from the moment we wake up, right? Like, have I had enough rest? Do I want to get up? Oh no, I don't want to get up. What I'm going to wear? What I'm going to eat? Like all those decisions compounding. So I just really thought about that, and I just started eliminating or automating any choice that I could that didn't make sense or needed.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like as simple as what I wear. I have a bunch of green shirts, a bunch of black shirts, and then a few just random shirts. I don't.
Yeah.
I wear the same thing almost every day.
Have you seen Free Guy, the movie, the new movie? He's just got blue shirts and tan pants.
Blue shirts and tan pants. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. So something like that.
Yeah.
And what I found that over time, what this is doing is creating more space, right? Creating more time. And in that time, if you really start spending and utilizing properly, use your heart, you'll see other things, and life will create other things for you, especially if you act on them, right? So just trying little things and seeing what will come up for it has been huge for me. And I don't know, it's just, having that awareness around it. It's
right.
There's a lot going on around us, right? Our brain is filtering out so much. So if you just open the possibility to see any of it, it's amazing what's there.
Ryan,
what Justin just talked about there.
Yeah.
What Justin talked about there is there's the law of the void or law of the vacuum. And so when you simplify, for you, it was just, okay, I'm just going to, make it just so instead of 30 different shirt colors and patterns and stuff, it's just down to 2 or 3. What that does is that opens up a void or a vacuum. The universe wants to then fill it. And so it opens up possibilities for creation. And people can do that. Like I've been learning to do that with my life. I had a very chaotic life. I was an auctioneer, had a consignment store, was addicted to buying large amounts of things, had
Ryan could literally open an Amazon store from his garage. Like if you have something that you need, I swear he has it.
Yeah. I just went camping with Paul Cardall and another guy that was a contestant on the 8th season of Alone. His name is Jordan Bell, and we'll probably have him on as well. But Jordan Bell was like, hey, let's create a sauna in the woods. And I was like, hey, well, I've got this. And I pulled out this beach tent that was in my trailer. Yeah, that'll work perfect. But if we only had some clamps, hey, here's some clamps. You know, like everything he said I had sitting right there, you know, which is nice, but at the same time, like the chaos and the clutter and the amount of stuff, it's just stuff. And I like my life revolved around that. It was so tied to that stuff that new stuff didn't come in. And the instant that I started letting go of some of the old things, right? And this could be metaphoric for the old way of being or the simplification of a process or a habit or a pattern. You could eliminate those things with the intention and the thought of allowance for the new stuff to come into your life. You could get very specific on what you want and start bringing that in. We can start getting into the law of attraction. But yes, you're right, Diana. It does. Excess creates a lot of brain clutter, uses up energy that you could be spending on other things. And so, Justin, I'm glad you brought that up because it's been valuable in my life. I've used it in different ways because I am not going to go to the pain cave anytime soon and eat pancakes with you. I'll eat pancakes at the end after you've been through the pain cave, though.
No, I want
You cook them.
waffles. Are there
No, I
waffles in the
want
pain cave?
Only if you get rid of your pancakes.
Yeah. Well, so I had a thought too around what Justin was saying around the choices. So many options. We get into choice overload where we can't make decisions because there's too many options.
Of course.
And so narrowing down the options to limit to just a few really does open you up to make decisions in your life. And I think one of the things with the heart-centered approach is being able to make a decision and feel comfortable with it, feel able to move forward. And yes, I feel good with this. I'm going to go with it. But when you get into that too much choice or too many things, then it can be really hard to move forward. Rachel, do you have thoughts on that?
This thing we're talking about energy, energy. If we make some decisions, like I'm in the health industry, so I teach people just make a decision that you normally don't do certain things. So you don't have to keep making the decision, make the decision. Then you free up energy to be who you're supposed to be. And I think that's what we're talking about is the energy to go forward, to be more full of love, to be able to shine our best light, to attract the best things in our life and to help serve at a high level. And we don't want to keep having to do things that kind of wear down our willpower because we're making the decisions to remake a decision we should have made long ago. And I think that, we just have to be able to sit back and say what it is that I really want to be, do, have an experience, and make certain foundational decisions, and then we open up the opportunity to help more people.
Yeah, I love it. Perfect. Yeah, I ran into a blank thought there.
I was
Don't
thinking
you love
too,
that?
Nick, like on that line that Rachel's talking about is that, like, I don't know, as we're creating and as we're going through these processes and opening up, you might be at home and going, oh my gosh, I'm not a runner. I'm not, like, that's amazing. That's huge. That's giant. I've never been asked to speak on a national, corporate stage like Rachel. Those are giant things. And yes, they are. But everybody is at a different stage, or wherever they are, you are right now. But the cool thing about life is that you can pause and reflect right now, take inventory of what's happening in your life. Start asking, where am I? What do I want to do? It's the Zoolander. Who am I? Just pause and reflect. I mean, it's as simple as that. Look in the mirror. Have a conversation with yourself. Don't beat yourself up, but just take inventory of where you are, because where you are is where you're at right now. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. All of the things that you've been through have been for your experience. Now's the decision of where do you want to go from here. That's the coolest part about being alive, is you get to decide where you want to go from here, no matter your circumstances. Now, your circumstances are your circumstances, so there might be challenges inside of those. And so you'll have to figure some of those things out. But the brain is very capable of doing just that. If you slow down, pause, and think about, like, where you're at, and then do like in your book. Nick wrote the most incredible book, The Giants and the Smalls. If you don't have it, go grab it, because in that, the small in the book asks giant questions after he hears the giants in the distance, and he pauses and he reflects and he thinks about What does it look like to change? How could I change? If they could do it, could I do it? Who could I get to show me how to do what I want to do? All of these things are expansive thinking, expansive questions. So to kind of dive into that, then opens the mind and opens the space. If you could declutter some of that, opens the space to then be able to grow from that point forward and do that regularly. I know that these guys, after a race, Justin, I'm sure after you eat your waffles and pancakes and quesadillas and all the good stuff at the end, I'm sure you go back and dissect, okay, what happened at, like I had this pain point, my ankle at mile 20. He knows the mileage at where it was. Okay, well, how do I adjust from here? So you take that inventory, slow it down, and then start training for the next one and get a little bit better or a little bit more prepared and do it again and then do it again and then do it again. Be to do, right, Nick?
Yeah, as I hear this, I started out this life at 8 pounds, 11 ounces. I now weigh just about 200 pounds. I expanded a little bit, right? With very little effort on my part. I'll bring this around. Don't worry. I'll bring it back. It ties in. But you think about it. If I would have jumped from 8 pounds, 11 ounces, and the very next month been at 200 pounds, I would have had some serious stretch marks. Right. And in our lives, we get these stretch marks when we try and push so hard and so fast in our lives to get somewhere. We forget that it's incremental. Like Justin didn't run 62 miles in a day. Rachel didn't just all of a sudden create a successful business overnight. It took time. It took self-similar steps on a daily basis to create that expansion and that growth. Otherwise, you get into those pain points and those stretch marks, right? So did I do well? Did I pull that back in a little bit?
That was pretty good. I was impressed.
I think if you trust the process that you're on the right path, I didn't have to do much to get to where I am physically. And our lives are kind of that way, but we just need to know where we're going. Like Steve Jobs says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only do that looking backward. And we forget that. We want to know the how before we step into it. And we won't do it unless we know every step. But even if we knew all the steps, because it seems so overwhelming, if somebody knew how many steps Justin's taken to get there, they would never do it. It would be too much.
Well, I think too, there's a lot of in between, like being aware, but it's gratitude is the shift. There's a pivot is to say, I was helping a client just today and she was getting stuck. She had accomplished so much, but she was frustrated because she didn't feel she was where she wanted to be. And I go, oh my gosh, this whole year, look at how many changes you made. Let's go back and talk about what did you do? What did you do right? And the gratitude and all the things you accomplished. And then we'll just talk on one or two more things and move forward. So she got stuck in, I'm not really doing well. I'm like, let's count them up. Let's go back and to be grateful for where you were. And now we talk about where you'd like to be and just don't make it so overwhelming because we don't have to jump. Some people like to go real fast like Justin. We'd like to race through everything. Some people want to take it little by little and kind of go back and forth until we kind of navigate that. It's okay.
I like the idea of gratitude and then also appreciation. If we think of appreciation in terms of money, it's an increase in value or an increase of the value of the thing. So when you look back and reflect on your experiences with appreciation, you're actually adding value to those experiences, which enhances the gratitude that you feel. So you're increasing the value of those experiences. Yeah. What other thoughts do you guys have around that?
I mean, same thing pretty much, celebrating the successes is the easy part, right? If you can kind of celebrate the failures as well in a way and learn to enjoy them, you actually learn more from the failure than you do from the success, right? You know what not to do the next time. You know how to go about it. So, obviously gratitude, all of that, appreciation is huge, but sometimes you may only see, the negatives or the bad things. So find a way to, appreciate those too, celebrate those too, and just make them fun. And then it doesn't become this negative thing that you have to deal with. You kind of alter it and make it interesting. Do you practice harder than you race? Yeah.
Yeah. Great question here.
Make the race as easy as possible.
To
go back to what you said about the stretch marks, right? when I started this journey, I hadn't ran. I started at the beginning of the year, and I hadn't ran in, a couple of years probably before that. I ran a lot when I was younger, but I stopped for a couple of years, and then I did 48 miles like all at once without any training. And I tried to train, but I got shin splints, so I couldn't get them back out. So I ran 48 miles with shin splints, and it actually like bruised my shin bones to the point it took me 2 months to recover. And then I started training for like these ultras. So take steps. I learned in the failure not to do that because I couldn't run at all for 2 months really. And just have fun with the process.
I like this question that's up right now. Why do we struggle with holding on to joy and feeling it? I've always wondered. I'm going to tackle this, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think it's an evolutionary adaptation. It's one of those like anger and frustration and sadness and anxiety and fear. Joy is designed as an emotion, which means chemicals are released in the body, so it will be fleeting. But the satisfaction is different. So you can have satiation and satisfaction around your life, but joy is one of those things, and happiness is one of those things that's designed to be fleeting so that you'll pursue more of it. If our ancestors, the cavemen, had killed an elephant and they were permanently happy, they wouldn't have gone out and killed another elephant. They wouldn't have had any reason to, because they would have been permanently happy, and there's no reason to pursue that. And so without it being fleeting, we wouldn't pursue happiness. And, if we felt the same way about our darker emotions, that they're fleeting and they're designed to serve us, we probably wouldn't be as afraid of them as we tend to be. What do you guys think around that? Do you have some differing views or thoughts?
I was thinking about joy, and a lot of times it feels like we're searching for it outside. Like something else needs to bring this to me in the form of entertainment or money or outside things. I've been working on finding joy internally and exploring that journey of like it, and it ties into a lot of the gratitude, that we've been talking about today too, is that wow, like what am I grateful for? And that to me brings joy. I can find joy inside of me and like who I'm being, who I am, what I decide to do next. There's joy in that for me. Going down to Southern Utah and teaching those kids and talking to them and seeing their faces light up, and how I showed up and how I prepared for that. I'm sure, Justin, you relate to this a little bit too. And Rachel, as you prepared, you could find that joy. Giving the speech could bring joy as well, or running the race could bring the joy. But I've found that I also can feel joy in the journey of it all, and finding it inside of the heart space as well.
I love that. As we come to the end of this, we've got about 2 minutes to wrap up. And so I'd want to kind of go around the room and get some final thoughts here around the idea of being heart-centered in exploring and creating your life. Rachel, do you want to kind of lead off with a quick 1 minute thought there?
I just thought, the joy is what we're all hopefully searching for. And like you mentioned, Ryan, it's really not without, it doesn't matter what we do, what races we run, what titles we have. It's about what we are inside. And I think one of the biggest reasons why we want that, we struggle with holding on to joys because we don't feel we're worth it. We don't feel that we're enough. Well, we are. And we have to go back down inside the deep heart of who we are and who created us. And we know that we're enough. And we just have to know that we're enough because we're able to love and able to love deep. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we just have to be present in it.
That's beautiful. Justin?
Yeah. Stop taking life so seriously. This is one big game. This is fun.
Yeah.
Just have fun, do as much as you can, and see what comes from it. What's the worst that could happen? You have to readjust and try something different. Cool, right? Eventually, if you try enough things and do enough things, regardless of where you're at on your journey, something's going to click, and you're going to pour your heart into it, and then creating life from a heart-centered approach becomes nearly effortless.
Awesome. Thank you. Ryan?
I don't even know if I could top anything like that. I feel the same way as both of those giants, and I'm grateful that there are people that I can look to and find those people in your life that you can look to. Because I look towards Justin, I look towards Rachel, and a lot of other giants in my life that that help me, that can help me correct my thinking and help me to remember who I am, that I'm worthy, that I'm enough, that I matter, and when I'm not coming from the heart space, to be able to say, hey, yo, we need to dial that down or dial that in. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
In maybe not so uncertain terms, they can talk to you in different ways depending on who they are and how they are in your life. But I'm grateful for those people. So and for you at home, continue to work on that. Look internally and see how you're being, and then the cool thing is you get to decide however it looks moving forward.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it. Right?
There's
No, I love it. You know, this whole thing wraps up. It really gives me space too to remember to get back into the heart as often and frequently as I can. It's, you know, the whole coming back to joy and taking life less seriously, just being at peace. One of my mantras is peace is my birthright. And so getting back to that, remembering to do that is really important. So I want to thank each of you for your thoughts today. We're going to wrap up the show here. For those that are watching, continue to follow us. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, go do that now. You can follow these shows on Cat Country. Upcoming, we have Abigail Olaya. Abigail, I said that way weird. On the secret to creating the life of your dreams. And then following her will be Dr. Will Moreland, how to overcome perceived limitations. So we've got some great shows coming down the line. And if you're not subscribed and you haven't dinged the bell, do that, because it'll remind you as soon as these come live so that you can be here with us and comment. And so thanks for being with us. We'll see you in the next episode. You all make it a great evening.
Love you too.
Awesome.